Hello and welcome. So I want you to think about this. What happens when one of the most private, protected spaces you can imagine, a therapist's office, is suddenly blown apart by political terror? Today, we're diving into the powerful real-life account of a psychoanalyst who was forced to flee Argentina in the 1970s. We're going to explore the deep psychological wounds that get left behind when a therapist and their patients are forced to say a sudden, impossible goodbye.
To really get the heart of this story, we have to start right here, with the analyst's own words. This isn't just a story about a professional relationship ending. No, this is about trying to survive in a world that has been completely turned upside down. A world where the simple act of thinking, of asking questions, could literally get you killed.
So let's just set the stage for a moment. Picture this. We're in Argentina, it's the late 1970s, and the country is in the grip of a truly brutal military dictatorship. In 1976, a military junta seizes power, and it unleashes years of absolute terror. But here's where it gets really strange. Right in the middle of all this persecution, this horror, Argentina hosts and wins the 1978 Soccer World Cup. It's this bizarre, grotesque contradiction. They're broadcasting an image of national pride and celebration to the entire world, while at home, they're terrifying their own citizens. Just think about that mix of manufactured joy and very, very real horror.
And at the absolute heart of this terror was the practice of disappearing people. Now, this wasn't just an arrest or being thrown in prison. State forces would literally kidnap people, students, artists, intellectuals, even therapists, and they would just vanish, gone. Their families were left in this agonizing limbo, with zero answers, no bodies to mourn, and absolutely no way to get justice.
So the regime created what our analyst calls a disconcerting passivity. Paranoia was everywhere, and psychoanalysts were specifically targeted. Why? Well, because their entire job is based on questioning, on independent thought, and to the junta, that was the same thing as subversion. Police would actually raid therapy sessions. In that kind of environment, just showing up for your therapy appointment became a huge risk, a quiet act of defiance.
And all of this is what brings us to the core of our story today, the analyst's own personal crisis. With her life literally in danger, she had to make a choice that was, well, pretty much impossible.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? Her decision to leave wasn't some clean escape. It was a deeply traumatic act of self-preservation, and she knew it would inflict new wounds on the very same people she was trying to help heal. She was saving her own life, sure, but she was leaving this trail of unfinished work and unresolved pain behind her. The constant terror outside created this really unique dynamic inside the therapy room. The analyst describes how sessions became a kind of psychic retreat, sort of an unspoken agreement with her patients to build a mental bunker together. It was this fragile, shared delusion that for that 1 hour, the horrors of the outside world couldn't touch them. But that protection, it was about to be completely shattered.
Okay, so to really understand the damage this sudden break caused, we need to take a quick look at how therapy is supposed to end.
This is so important. In psychoanalysis, the ending, what they call termination, it's not just, see you later. It is an active, essential part of the treatment itself. It's meant to be a carefully managed process of mourning the therapeutic relationship so the patient can take everything they've learned and carry it forward on their own.
So the ideal way to end therapy is what's called a bilateral termination. It's a mutual, gradual weaning process. But what happened here in Argentina was the exact opposite, a unilateral, abrupt separation that was forced by external terror. This wasn't a gentle weaning. It was, as the analyst calls it, a traumatic amputation. It just created a whole new loss on top of all the old ones.
So what did this actually feel like for the people left behind? Well, the analyst shares a few vignettes of her patients, and their dreams give us this incredible, raw window into their inner turmoil.
First up, there's Susan. She was a 40-year-old woman who had already suffered some profound losses in her life. And after years of really hard work, she was so close to a successful, planned end to her analysis. And then the news that her analyst was leaving just dropped like a bomb.
And after she heard the news, she had this dream. She dreamt of a girl left on an operating table, mid-surgery, with her body still open. Wow. It just perfectly captured her feeling of being left unfinished, exposed, and totally vulnerable all over again. The analyst's departure had turned what should have been a triumphant conclusion into yet another trauma for her.
Then there was Roberto, a 45-year-old man. For him, the analyst's leaving felt like a direct attack, a threat to his own survival.
He felt like she was literally stealing his future, just robbing him of his chance to grow. But his feelings were also really complicated. I mean, on one hand, he was furious with her for abandoning him, but at the same time, he was relieved that she was escaping to safety. This kind of conflict is such a powerful example of the psychological chaos these patients were just thrown into.
But in contrast to that, the story of Rosa, an 18-year-old who was also finishing her treatment, it offers this little glimmer of hope.
After she learned the analyst was leaving, Rosa dreamt she was being born to a smiling, happy mother. This just revealed her incredible resilience. She was able to mourn the loss, but also internalize the good that she'd received, reframing the departure not as an abandonment, but as a kind of rebirth into a hopeful future. And her dream, it really became a gift of hope for both of them.
So the big question is, how does anyone survive this kind of unfinished, traumatic ending? The analyst offers a final, really profound insight into the mechanics of psychological survival. So the key, according to a psychoanalyst named Leon Grinberg, lies in the difference between two types of guilt. The first is persecutory guilt. Think of this as a destructive, paranoid feeling that just eats you alive and leads to pathological mourning. But depressive guilt? That's different. That's the healthy, real sadness that comes with loss, and it actually leads to a genuine concern for others and a desire to repair and to heal. And this, right here, is the key to their psychological survival. It wasn't about avoiding pain or being tough, it was about the ability to access and work through that deep sadness, that depressive guilt. The patients who could really mourn in a healthy way were the ones who managed to navigate the wreckage and find a path forward.
And in the end, the analyst closes with this really powerful acknowledgement. The healing was not a one-way street. By sharing their pain and their anger and their hope, her patients actually helped her process her own trauma and guilt over having to leave them. It's just a beautiful testament to the profound human connection at the very heart of therapy.
You know, this story from 1970s Argentina, it leaves us with a question that feels just as relevant today as it was back then. In a world that is so full of turmoil, where political chaos can violently disrupt our lives, how do we protect our inner sanctuaries? And maybe more importantly, how do we even begin to heal when they are inevitably broken? That's something to think about. Thanks for joining me.